The soldier, months of cold, year 2. He ran. He hadn't known much besides running for days. There had been times when he had felt safe, of course, but Binky couldn't remember those times. The sores and cuts on his arms and legs where the white monsters had scored him numerous times, scored him, but let him live, to further the chase were taking their toll, and the Cyclops' breath had grown irregular and ragged. He had made peace with this as he stared as the soot and burnished brown snow beneath him, discolored from whatever had tainted it and his own blood. After all, he had failed whomever had tried to make it to the island, failed Bolslava. Maybe these colorless apparitions were some sort of things sent to punish him? Binky closed his eye as the shadows, barely visible against the ashen snow, drew around him, and from the snow they rose in great droves, stark and hungry. Some held blades of something that was neither light nor emptiness, and others held great banners that looked somehow more solid than themselves. But they were all made of the same stuff that simply shook when he had tried to fight back, shook, and reformed. And Binky did not want to fight, but when at last he had tried, and that too had failed. Now he could see nothing, and simply waited. The roaring crack was not what he had expected death to sound like, and it was only when seconds had passed that Binky realized he hadn't died at all. Slowly opening his eye just in time for the second retort of gunfire, he watched in surprise as one of the white shapes exploded into an ashen mist. The others stunned and confused by their allies' fate, or perhaps simply incapable of acting on two fronts at once. But then they perceived her. The figure in the distance, barely visible against the surface of the tree she was leaning against, and rushed towards her in a great morass of flowing white. Binky had seen them grow agitated before, but this time, for whatever reason, he sensed something entirely different. He sensed anger. Anger wasn't enough, however, as entity after entity fell, first to rifle fire and then to the metallic whir of an axe. Finally, the last of the things sunk into the snow, dissolving rapidly as its armaments faded around it. He saw the figure look from side to side, then dart across the snow towards him. Binky threw up both his hands, not sure what to do, and was relieved as the newcomer stopped short of him, frowning and dismounting from a pair of wooden skids at her feet.
"What are you doing on district land?"
She had short hair, half-shaved and half-braided, and she was missing an eye. Feeling a bit safer despite the coolness of her reaction, Binky slowly lowered his hands to the ground and rose up to his full height.
"Thank you." Binky didn't know this land was owned. Binky was just running from them.
She turned her good eye to where there had once been perhaps 20 of the things, and snorted.
"Well, if you're on the run from them, you're welcome here, so long as you pull your part. Are you good to stand?"
Binky nodded slowly, then slipped back into the snow from the wounds on his legs, and was surprised at the speed with which she helped him up. Especially for a human, her strength was impressive.
"Easy does it. You're not going anywhere yet, easy does it. There you go. I'm Ruslana. I've been fighting these things since the snows began, and looking for the person putting them into being. When I find him, I'll end the matter, permanently. Hopefully that'll be enough to bring back normal seasons."
The two began moving, though at a staggered pace. Binky was very grateful for this, because as much as he didn't want to admit it, he was in horrible pain. The snow helped a little bit, but Binky wasn't sure that grey snow was good for your health and complexion. Ruslana kept shooting glances at him, expression mixed between impatience and caution, though Binky had a feeling the two weren't entirely directed at him. Up ahead, the unfamiliar call of the shrieky birds that followed him when he was herding made Binky frown. Were they just going to keep this up until he'd?
"Hey there, Cyclops. You don't need to close your eye. We're there. Welcome to District."
District was just that. The hollowed-out concrete blocks of what had once been probably a human settlement of some sort. Binky wasn't sure if they had all been houses though, given how irregularly shaped the blocks were, with huge window slits and covered with posters advertising things he couldn't even make sense of.
"Found it like this, shaped it up. Anyone who stays here gets food, water, security. We can probably rig you up some armor and have you out on patrols in a day or two."
Ruslana thought aloud as several small, round rock-like entities scurried around them in confusion and interest, then scattered at her words.
Binky doesn't like fighting.
Binky began, feeling nervous that his new ally would hold this against him. Fortunately, Ruslana simply gave a nod of her head.
That's no problem. We're starting a foundry out by the first bit of land we've reclaimed. Do you feel comfortable doing ironworking?
Binky beamed.
If there's one thing Binky is good at, it's heavy labor. Glad to hear it, Cyclops. We've got a lot of entryways that will need gates, and I'm thinking of starting up various production lines for cans, shell casings, maybe a tunnel system under the town in case of siege. Why so much? Are you planning on invading someone?
Binky asked, feeling a little nervous. Ruslana spun on her feet. Not angry, but not pleased, either.
No, not ever. But I will make things safe and orderly here, whatever has to be done to achieve that. There are some especially horrible people here, Binky. It's my job to make sure that when they try to do whatever they please, they're met with the swift fist of the law. Is the law's fist really swift?
He wasn't sure why, but it seemed like an important question. Ruslana stopped, lips pursed.
Probably not. It's always seemed pretty lethargic to me, but that's why I'm giving it a swift kick with the hobnailed boot of the law. Which is swift. Okay, then.
Binky smiled.
Take me to the foundry. I'll work hard to help armor the lethargic fist of the law and the boot of the law and all other parts of the law.
It wasn't hard to find the foundry, or rather, foundries, as there were several buildings in the complex, though most had been abandoned for some time. One was active, however, the air near it warm and smoky, and filled with the tiny rock people that had swarmed around he and Ruslana earlier. Despite lack of visible hands, they were operating bellows by stomping on them, and a system of similarly jury-rigged conveyors brought forth metals to be melted and cast.
They're excellent miners. I think they're refugees. We can't communicate quickly, but they shine a set of colors that indicates what they feel. Green seems to be happy, red is a denial/lack of resources, blue is anger, and yellow is compliance.
From the sea of green lights around them, they seemed to be pretty happy, Binky noted.
Why are they so uniformly happy? Because we're working towards the same goal, I have a feeling.
Ruslana's fists clenched tightly, her fingernails digging into her fist and drawing blood, though she clearly did not care.
Okay. That's good to hear. But can Binky speak freely? Sure. There's no port for the good ship censorship here.
Ruslana grinned wryly, but shrugged as the joke sailed past Binky.
This is a bad foundry. Binky can improve it. Is that okay?
She nodded her assent, and Binky ripped out the conveyors with one hand and placed them delicately in a nearby spot, as the rock people stopped to watch in awe. Then Binky widened the furnace, because it wasn't big enough to cast a lot of metal at once. Binky also thought about ripping the roof off and placing it higher, but that would require climbing, and he was slightly scared of heights.
Dominus!
Ruslana whispered, grinning from ear to ear.
All right, that is a good start, Binky. Keep it up. Those of us who eat meat up for slop in 4 hours, and the rest of us meet up regardless. Breaks keep people healthy and interested in work. Don't push yourself, since you're still recovering. Take your time and get used to the area, and report as you're ready.
Ruslana excused herself as the smiling Cyclops began his work, and tasted the cool crispness of the air as she left the foundry. There was still, after all, parcel after parcel of land to clear. She allowed herself perhaps 4 hours of sleep, and could manage on 2 if pressed, and the addition of a new face that was capable of actual speech was pretty reassuring enough to make her forget how bitter the pep pills tasted and go for another jaunt. It was easy enough to move silently. The snow wasn't too high, but it was light enough not to crunch yet as you walked, perfect for stalking through the wilderness and making sure nothing but no one was sneaking in uninvited. Ideally, she had set up watchtowers later. That Cyclops would be perfect for their construction, but until that time came, she'd have to make do with this. Though it was risky, several of the bolder people had set up exploratory mines outside of town. Ruslana was determined not to rely on the crudeness of a stone axe for long, regardless of how unnaturally sharp the stone around here seemed to be. For one, after meeting the bolder people, she couldn't help but feel as if she might accidentally chip into someone's grandparent. For the other, the metals that the Boulder people found didn't always correspond to those she was familiar with, and she was eager to test them. As she left the settled areas near District, Ruslana removed the skis from her back. They were crude, but much faster than walking in this terrain, and safer than snowshoes. The sky had grown rarely cloudless, permitting a view of a bright sky lit by a pale moon, or some other heavenly body. The light was dangerously exposing, but at least it was easy to navigate by, allowing Ruslana easy survey of her domain, from the snow-covered grass still eking by a solitary existence to the silently burbling creek that remained flowing in spite of the snow around it. But there was no more sign of the interlopers, and she had seen none escape. As of yet, District, and all those who yet dwelled within, were secure. Sighing and trying to fight exhaustion, Ruslana turned around as she reached the same distance she had reached night after night before, demarcated with bits of string tied around tree branches. And there he stood, watching, an ancient, but doing nothing. Ruslana said nothing, slowly withdrawing the rifle from her back, expression set. There was nothing to say. She fell upon Grendolf, screaming as the axe crushed through brittle and ancient bones effortlessly. Though the bones mended themselves easily enough, Grendolf only made a token show of resistance, occasionally dissipating from an area and reappearing elsewhere, but not otherwise fighting. After a few minutes, the Lich spoke.
The one who was with you before. Is she here no longer? What do you care, Lich?
Ruslana spat, then renewed her attack. But the anger was gone, because she remembered Kalimir, and because the Lich's refusal to attack was disheartening. Finally, she stopped, watching him, and waited.
I did not expect the hero to succumb so soon, nor fall in a battle that was outside of our own. I feel disappointment.
Despite the choice of words, there was a genuine sorrow in Grendolf's tone. A sorrow devoid of understanding, perhaps, and a sorrow based around the loss of a threat rather than remorse. Possibly, but a sorrow all the same.
Disappointment? A hero dies, if not directly by your hand then indirectly, it makes no difference. And all you feel is disappointment.
Ruslana renewed her attack, and once again Grendolf simply took the blows, minutes passing before either was willing to speak again.
Perhaps it was foolish of me to curse her in the first place. Our paths were not always set as such, but for the sake of love, she knew she must fight me, and for the sake of my duty, I would fight her. So it all seems predetermined. That's silly talk for not wanting to face up to your mistakes and admit you screwed someone over. And it sounds like you screwed yourself over, as well.
Ruslana shot a glance towards the sky. The moon was heavy above them.
Ah, hell! What was your duty in the first place?
Sitting in the snow, Ruslana watched the Lich carefully as he did the same. Unsteadily, clearly unused to such a calm gesture after such a long time of unlife.
The great dragons, Lazarus, and Dragunov, who exist in this world are as gods in yours, if only for point of example. As they exist, the land prospers. But at some point, long before anyone you have met drew breath, their existence was poisoned, corrupted. Wouldn't that mean the island was messed when I got here?
Grendolf nodded patiently, drawing illustrations in the air, that crackled to life, a maze of green and translucent light.
Yes, though it had been contained by careful effort. Lazarus lies imprisoned beneath the earth, and Dragunov's mind is sealed in the sky above, while his body slumbers, sealed in the jungle. It is animate without his will, and yet the moment it senses invaders, both it, and he, shall awaken. Geese. And then.
The two stared into the sky, and Ruslana wished not for the first time that she had something to drink, even if it was just that cucumber soda the stall owner guy had sold her and Kaylee. Wincing, she tried not to think about Kalimir.
The island, and all around it, and all who are on it, and all who depend on it in this realm, shall perish. This realm is not my own. I should not care. But I met many of my own friends on this place. Callously, I used them to try to protect it. The great serpent, Isilthwist, gave her life on my plea, determined to deter those who might awaken Lazarus. Why couldn't you just explain this? Kalimir. She would have helped you. I would have too. This doesn't sound like the thing anyone can do alone, even a powerful magician.
Grendolf laughed. A horrible, crackling, self-defacing and self-defying laugh.
Oh, how I had forgotten the short-sightedness of mortals. There is an order to things, as you know, like no other I have yet met. That one, Calimere, was a hero, and I am a lich. The order of things is that such a hero will seek great evil to slay, and do not misjudge me. By the definitions of your kind, your time, and your world, Ruslana, I am evil. Awfully quick to defend your villainy there, lich. Though I do agree that there's an order to things, that doesn't justify erasing one's mistakes by pretending that something was predetermined. Ah, but it was, soldier. If not by those rules, then by another yet more powerful than any magic I have lost over the millennia. Love.
Grendolf sighed and stared into the moon as if it might burn him in reply.
Would not you fight any foe, commit any crime, heal any amount of wounded, sacrifice your humanity, indeed, do anything for one that you truly love?
Now both were silent, the moon hanging in quiet judgment.
Yeah. I probably would. Then you understand. When two people who fight for things and people that they hold dear clash wills, it is peace that suffers, and perhaps, in the end, that which we love itself. She was engaged, you know.
For once, Grendolf smiled, his mastery over his own bones terrifying as they whirled into the familiar shape of a grin.
Indeed, I do. Would you believe it was my defeat that allowed her and the Princess Glaudier to be so betrothed? At the time, I was furious that such a hero could exist capable of destroying my magics at their prime. I fully expected that she would be capable of defeating me again. I fully expected.
And then both were silent.
What do you plan to do? I do not know. I cannot forgive you, or forget what you've done, but I do understand you, and I suppose that's enough. There's always room in district, and to be honest, if what you say is true, and we both know there's little reason to lie about it, now, there are bigger dangers to both you and I.
Grendolf nodded his thanks, though he was clearly thinking of something else, and never one to mince words, the lich spoke of it.
What if I told you that things did not have to be this way? What if I told you that there was a way that you could set things right? That we could set things right?
Up ahead, the carrion birds that had been stalking Binky through the snow grew heavy in number, despite lack of prey. Their distorted call rang out through the night sky. Ruslana shivered, but said nothing.
I am ancient, young human, and even with my powers so drained, am the only one I know of who can travel the dimensions with regular ease. I cannot bring much back, for it taxes even me, but I may return with knowledge, blueprints, materials. With May magic and your technology, it would become possible to fight off this crisis, and perhaps even turn back time itself. But to do so, I would do anything.
Ruslana said flatly, and the carrion birds up ahead scattered in all directions, squawking, fading into the darkness of the sky.
So be it.
Grendolf rose from the ground, face as irritable as any that had long since died.
I will give you no promises, for my first goal is that of yours. I would rather die than divert myself from it, and I have died many a time. I will continue to die until the threat to the island and this realm is destroyed, or it overcomes me. But once it has been eliminated, I promise to you that we will find a way to retrieve your friend as she was, if such a way exists.
Ruslana smiled, and it was an enigmatic smile that spoke of iron and smoke, of shadows that would yield to the coming light.
And I promise that whatever and whomever set this destruction in motion will find themselves tried and executed for their crimes. This island is my home, now, too. The last thing I want is to witness it sinking into the sea or whatever. Very well, Ruslana. I wish to see the place that you have carved from this chaos, that I may know with what we work. Will you show me this place?
Ruslana gave a curt nod, and got on her skis once more, the two setting off towards district proper. The rock people didn't seem to much notice or care about Grendolf's presence, but then again, the rock people seemed to trust anyone that came in with Ruslana. The lich was nonplussed by the smog being belched from the factory, by the whir of machinery and the snow cleared away by the constant motion of smaller forms, but pleased at the energy of it all, the way that the entire town in some way resembled a machine, with the whole of it working for the benefit of all who dwelled within. Finally Ruslana led Grendolf to the cabin she had built for herself. Rudimentary, as she rarely slept there, but full with the documents carved on vellum from the boar wolves that had begun to show up in increasing numbers. Maps, plans for expansion, and other such things. Of especial interest to the sorcerer was a document detailing a complicated device indeed, that he requested leadership of. Ruslana granted it, and the lich hid the parched skin under the gloom of his robes.
So, you've seen everything this place offers. Do you think you have what it takes to get me what I need? And after that, what then? We must find the human who calls himself Leopold. He was weak, but possessed of a fervor I find distinctly unquieting. I am certain he is a pawn of greater powers, but any pawn can betray its liege if the leech does not monitor it. Yeah. I want a piece of that guy, too. Let's talk worst possible outcome. Say one, or both, of these dragons is permanently woken. Then we die. Permanently, in my case.
It was hard to tell, but Ruslana was pretty sure the lich was grinning cheekily.
Yeah, very funny. But no plan survives contact with the enemy. It doesn't pay to think about things as if we're going to get what we want just because you and I are the definition of hardcore. So, let's look at it like this. We find Leopold, beat the guy until he talks, or otherwise remove him from the picture. Somehow, the dragons are woken up. Or we can't find Leopold, or something else happens. Then it has been some time since I have been surprised, but you raise a good point. Very well, then we must attempt to either lure the dragon, or dragons, back to sleep, or defeat them. I favor the first option. Heavily. Okay. It's enough to work on, at least. First things first, though, I need to know district is fortified, and that any land we take, we can hold. You've seen my plans, with the civilians I've got now, and assuming no more growth. It is possible. Indeed, for the first time, I feel this is entirely possible. But I must make one request, even though I do not like to do so regularly. Will you hear me out? Shoot.
Ruslana grinned, then amended her comment as Grendolf stared blankly at her.
Ask away, even. Rest. For this night, I will take the burden of watching over the settlement, or rather, the serpents that dwell beneath the earth shall, while I go to find what I may for the future of our works together. Though you seem to take care of those here, your partnership is worthless to me if you cannot also so monitor yourself.
Laughing, Ruslana gave the lich a half grin.
Normally, I'd try to find a loophole, but no. I appreciate it. It's been hard doing this alone, and I wouldn't be able to keep it up with just myself. I'll wish you good hunting, then, and see you when you return. And though I never expected to say it, at least not quite like this. Thanks, Grendolf. You are welcome, child. Until next we meet.
And as the lich faded in between the myriad dimensions, Ruslana yawned, finally conceding defeat to the exhaustion that plagued her. Closing her good eye and resting her head against her desk, she slowly drifted off to the first real night of sleep she had had since that day. Even as the last few doubts about what she was doing tried to surface in the seas of her subconscious, only to be swept away as sleep washed over her, the sound of distant fire and the clang of bellows, a lullaby that almost reminded her of a distant home. Chapter end.